Hey guys, we're talking about the Age of Faith. The Age of Faith comes after the Dark Ages, which we just talked about right before Christmas break, and we're going to jump into the Age of Faith. Now, like I said, we're going to be talking a lot about the church. When we're talking about the church, we're talking about the Catholic Church. And so we've got some problems that are going on in the Catholic Church. So what we've got is some priests are illiterate or could barely read, and they have to read the prayers each and every day. And so what they're doing, some of them are making up these prayers, and so that's a big problem that the church is having. Another one is that the popes, not the best morals in the world, and so these are the guys who are supposed to be the next to God, and all of a sudden their morals are kind of questionable. We have some bishops and some abbots who care more about being feudal lords. We talked about feudalism in the last chapter. They care more about that than they're caring about the issues, the religious issues, being spiritual leaders. But the three biggest problems that the church is experiencing are that first, priests are getting married. We know today priests don't get married, but priests are getting married then because they're trying to read these laws and they're going through everything, and it's just not translating. The second thing is bishops are selling positions in the church. This is called simony, S-I-M-O-N-Y, simony. And they're selling positions in the church. Now, what the problem with this is going to be, think about for a second, if you are a priest and you have bought your position into the church, you may not know your religious background. You may not know all these things, and you're not going to be the best spiritual leader. You decided you wanted to be a powerful person rather than a religious person. The next thing is kings are appointing the bishops, not the pope. The kings are appointing the bishops. Therefore, if you do what the king wants, you can kind of sneak under the radar and become more oriented towards what the king wants rather than what the church wants. And so we've got all these problems. And so what has to happen is things need to change. And so what's going to go on is we're going to move forward to some reorganization and some reform in the Catholic Church. And so we get Pope Leo the Ninth and Pope Gregory the Seventh. Need to know who those two guys are. Leo the Ninth, Gregory the Seventh. They're going to try to enforce the church's law, and the popes to come after them are going to try and reform the church as well. And they try to make it more like a kingdom where the pope has the highest seat. So we've got kind of a pyramid going on, almost like in the military where the general is on top, and the further you go down, the more people you have. We're going to have the pope on the top, and it's going to filter all the way down to where you have the priests and then the common people. They developed a group of advisors, and these advisors are going to come up with canon law. This is the law of the church. Still exists today in the Catholic Church, canon law, C-A-N-O-N, just like a canon. And so that's another thing to know about. And so the church decides, how are we going to pay for all these things? We've got all these different projects going. How are we going to pay for these things? And so what they do is they collect tithes. Tithes are 10% of your salary. So whatever you make, 10% of that, it goes right off the top to the church. Now what happens is the church winds up collecting much more than they need. And rather than saying, okay, we estimated too much, we're going to give this back to you, what they started doing is they started using it for good deeds. This is where a lot of charities in the world start from. Think about St. Margaret's Hospital in Spring Valley, or St. Mary's, used to be in Streator, St. Francis in Peoria. Think about the saint in from it. They are funded by the Catholic Church, and this all starts in Europe, where almost all of the hospitals were sponsored by the church, and this is where they come about. So some good things are coming out of this, and the church is undergoing this reformation, not the Reformation, which is going to be in a couple of chapters. What we also see in this era is a new style of architecture for the church, the Gothic style. Gothic style churches are built starting in around the 1100s, and they are built so that they are upward. So they are pointing upwards. They are thrusting upwards, some people like to say. And so they're pointing towards God. They're trying to get closer to God. It's named for a German tribe called the Goths. They were not people who dressed all in black and wore white makeup or anything like that, but it's a German tribe called the Goths. And these churches would have sculptures, they would have stained glass, they had wood carvings, all these things that are designed to help worshipers see God. One of the most common ones that you're going to see, one of the common examples, is going to be the Notre Dame in France. Check that out when you get a second. What's going to ultimately come about is the Crusades. We've all heard about the Crusades. We've all seen some movies, good and bad, about the Crusades. But what were the Crusades? The Crusades are a missions trip to try and take over the Holy Land. The Holy Land being in Israel, Jerusalem, that area of the world, and this is where Christ was, and things like that. So this is the Catholic Holy Land. And so they want to go in and get rid of the Muslims who are taking over that area. Now, see, the thing is, we've got some side goals that are going on, but the goal that they say is always to go in and regain power of the Holy Land. But there's some economic goals here. The Byzantine emperor asked Christians to come in because the Muslims are attacking his land. They thought if the Christians come in and try and stop the Muslims, then these attacks will stop on his land and they can deal with him. So the Byzantine emperor is going to pay these Christians to come in. Next one is we have some social goals. There's the knights that are fighting each other all over parts of Europe, and so to try and stop this, the king says, well, let's send them all. They're going to fight one common enemy rather than fighting against ourselves. So we have kind of a social goal there as well. We have political goals. Younger sons do not get land. Their older brothers get their land. So if you are the firstborn son, you can cash in when dad dies, you get the land. If you're the younger brother, you don't get so much. And so they would go off to they would go off into these wars and hope that the king would reward them when they came home with some power or some land of their own. One thing to look at in chapter 14, section 1 is the map of kind of the route to and from the Holy Land. It's going to be important in the next chapter, and we're starting to talk about the plague. So make sure that you do check out those routes that they took. So check those out. And then we have another type of crusade that's going on in Spain. This is the Spanish Crusades. There was an effort there to drive Muslims out of Spain. They had started coming in through across the Mediterranean into Spain from Africa, northern Africa, and this is called La Reconquista. And so this is where the Inquisition comes about. The Inquisition, if you were going to if you're going into the Inquisition, what is going to happen is they're going to ask you beliefs, your beliefs in the church. So do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? If you answer yes, okay, we'll move on to the next question. If you answer no, they will continue questioning you until your belief became those of the church. And so some of their ways of questioning people are a little bit not so typical, we'll say. They might burn you at the stake and continue to ask you questions while you were burning. They might put you onto a wheel and attach you to a wheel and turn the wheel around, and at the bottom of the wheel would be razor blades. And so they would put tiny little cuts all over your body and continue to do so and ask you, do you believe now? And so these are kind of some of the ways that people the Spanish were trying to convince the Muslims that they were correct and that the Muslims were wrong. And so when you think of things, when people say they're going to get medieval on you, this is where that comes from the Spanish Crusades and from the violence that is going on there. So that's it for today. Check through the notes that are attached to the video. Check through the notes on the website, and we will see you in class tomorrow, guys. Have a great night.